Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Wellness Wednesdays, a series where we'll be diving a little deeper into mental health and all that it entails. Speaking of mental health, I thought that it would be a great start to start from the beginning. What is mental health? And so in this video, I'll be breaking down to you just what mental health is and what mental health is not. You can also have a look at my previous post where I shared some of the things that I'll be discussing with you today in this video. I'll begin by sharing with you what mental health is not, and I've got 3 points for this one. The first is that mental health is not an interchangeable term with mental illness. I know a lot of us, when we hear the term mental health, we automatically think of depression or PTSD or anxiety. And while this is a part of mental health, it does not necessarily mean that mental health means mental illness. It is not one and the same thing. Number 2, mental health is also not the absence of mental illness. So just because you may not have a diagnosis of clinical depression or PTSD or any other psychological disorder that you may know of or be aware of, it does not necessarily mean that you are mentally healthy. Mental health is also not a weakness in personality, neither is it a character flaw. The topic of mental health and mental health itself is extremely complex. It includes so many different aspects, and so it is not as straightforward as we often think. Now let us talk about what mental health is. The first thing that I would like all of us to understand and keep in our minds is that all of us have mental health. It is just another aspect of health, like when we're talking about our physical health, our emotional health, our psychological health, right? It's all one and the same thing. So it's just another aspect of your health. Number 2 is that our mental health exists on a continuum. This means that we do not necessarily have a state of arrival or a constant or permanent state of being mentally healthy. All of us kind of move from excelling to in crisis, surviving. Sometimes we're surviving, sometimes we're thriving, right? For example, all of us went through the pandemic, and I hope I'm not triggering anyone, but all of us experienced the pandemic. During this time, a lot of us were existing in a state of crisis, others were just surviving as well. And this is what experiences can do to us. Many of us experienced loss. Maybe we were let go from our jobs and our companies shut down. Some of us may have struggled with abuse in the home. In that time, a lot of people's mental health was crippling, right? So a lot of us were living in crisis mode or in survival mode. So when we talk about your mental health being on a continuum, let's say you recently got married, you just got your dream job, you're living your best life, everything is going so well for you. During that time, your mental health may be excelling, right? And then let's say a few months later, you lose a loved one, you lose somebody very close to you. And let's say you have been working really hard at your dream job and you're not promoted. This might affect your mental health. And so you might move down from excelling to maybe just thriving or surviving, or maybe even in crisis, depending on what is going on around you and how you're feeling and how you interpret the situation, right? We do not have a place where or a time where we're all kind of excelling. Sometimes circumstances, we may be sad, we may be going through hard times, and that does affect our mental health. But in the same breath, it does not necessarily mean that mental health is all about positive emotions and positive experiences like we have all been led to believe. There are some people who may be having a lot of negative experiences. In that kind of situation, we might say that a person is resilient. But again, this does also not mean that if you're not taking negative experiences well, that you are mentally weak or whatever people might say. That is not true at all. But when we're talking about mental health, we are talking about the ability to cope, to adjust, to regulate our emotions, and to live harmoniously with others, right? If you go to a mental health practitioner for, let's say, for counseling, one of the first things that they'll assess is how you're living with others, how you're living with self, how you talk to yourself. There are so many components of mental health that are not discussed, but if there's one thing that I want to leave with you today, and one thing that I want you to remember today, is that mental health is not just the presence of positive emotions or experiences. Mental health does exist on a continuum. Everybody has mental health, and mental health in itself just entails the ability to cope, to adjust, to regulate our emotions, but also to live in harmony with self and with others. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions and if you found this video helpful, and I will see you guys again on next week's Wellness Wednesday episode.